I jumped on that little girl's coffin because I knew her heart was still beating. They said I was just a dog, but I smelled what machines missed. I heard what doctors dismissed, and when they finally opened the lid, she breathed. The wind that morning was cold enough to sting, though I didn't feel it much. My coat was thick, my focus sharper than the air slicing through Elmridge Cemetery. Rows of folding chairs lined the small grassy slope, faces tucked beneath coats and scarves. Most eyes were wet. Some just stared blankly ahead. And at the front of them all, under a grey sky that looked like it had lost the will to shine, sat the smallest white coffin I'd ever seen. They said she was gone. I didn't believe it. The leash burned against my neck as I yanked forward. The handler, some kid in uniform, Officer Reed, tightened his grip and barked at me to heel. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. Something in the air wasn't right. It wasn't grief that hung there. It was something else. Something faint, quiet, but alive. I saw her father, Dr. Grant Carson, standing like a statue at the head of the coffin. His shoulders looked too heavy for his frame, like grief had carved a hollow space inside him that was starting to swallow what was left. He wasn't holding back tears because he was strong. He was holding them back because they'd already drained out long ago. And then there was the man I hadn't seen in years. Hank, broad, bearded, and wrapped in worn leather. He stood near the back, eyes shaded beneath a trucker's cap, arms crossed over a chest full of tattoos and road miles. He hadn't even made it to the family pew. But his eyes, they were fixed on me. That's when I broke. I don't remember how I slipped the leash. Just that one moment I was behind the tape, and the next I was sprinting straight toward that coffin. Voices shouted. A few screamed. I heard the clatter of metal as Officer Reed tried to catch up. But I had already leapt. My front paws struck the polished wood. I felt the tremble of the box under me, and I stayed there. I didn't bark, didn't whimper. I just waited. She was in there. My girl. Lily Mae Carson. 7 years old. Full of fire and stubbornness and smiles that always showed a little too many teeth. They said she'd died in her sleep 3 days ago. Another seizure, a silent one this time. No movement, no sound, just gone. But I knew her better than anyone. I had laid beside her when her breath caught. I had nuzzled her shoulder before her fingers twitched. I had barked my warning long before the monitors caught anything. She was my purpose, my reason for learning to trust humans again. My anchor to a world that once hurt me so badly, I didn't think I could ever care for it again. And right now, I could feel it. A faintness, a thread. Her scent. It hadn't faded. It hadn't turned into the cold sterility of death. Someone shouted, "Get that dog off the coffin!" But I bared my teeth. Not because I was angry, not because I wanted to fight, but because I needed them to stop. I needed them to see. Hank moved first. His boots were silent in the grass. He didn't rush, just walked forward, like he'd seen something he recognized. "Hold up," he said, his voice low and dry, like gravel under wheels. "That dog, he ain't mourning. He's alertin'." They didn't listen at first. Some tried to drag me off. I growled again, low and steady, until even the funeral director paused. "She's gone, Hank," someone said. But he knelt beside the coffin, reached a hand toward me slowly, not to grab, not to control, just to feel. "Look at his ears," he whispered. "See the way they're pointed, forward, not back. And his tail, he's not scared, he's focused. This is a K9 in work mode. There was murmuring behind us now. People were unsettled, mourners unsure what to think. I leaned down and rested my head against the lid. I heard it. No, not heard. Felt. It wasn't rhythm, not like a heartbeat thumping proud and strong. It was heat, life, and a scent only I could know. A faint chemical trace, one I'd memorized long ago. It meant a storm was coming. It meant she wasn't finished fighting yet, and I wasn't about to let them bury her. The man in the white collar, the pastor, stepped toward us. "Sir," he said gently, addressing Hank, "we need to proceed." But Hank looked at Dr. Carson, who hadn't moved an inch. "Grant," he said, "you feeling what I'm feeling?" The father looked at me for the first time since I'd arrived. His face didn't change, but his eyes did. They widened just slightly, enough to let something else back in. Hope maybe, or maybe just confusion, but it was enough. "Open it," Hank said. The funeral director froze. "I'm sorry, but we can't." "She's my daughter," Grant said. His voice cracked like old wood. "And if he says she's not gone, then I need to know." There was shouting. Phones came out. Some were calling the police. Others were filming. But I didn't care. I stayed. My heart thudded slow and steady, timed to hers. And when the lid creaked open, I held my breath, because what I saw inside was Lily, not cold, not stiff, not peaceful like they'd described. She was warm, and her lips, barely, just barely, parted like she was trying to speak. I barked then, loud and sharp. The alert I'd only ever used in the worst moments. And Hank whispered, "Son of a bitch. She's alive." I didn't move. I wouldn't. Not until someone got her out of there. Not until the world saw what I had never stopped believing. That my girl wasn't gone. Not yet. Not while I could still hear her heartbeat. I wasn't always brave. I wasn't always useful. Truth is, before I ever wore a vest, before anyone called me K9, I was just a broken bag of bones lying in the mud beneath a cold log, trying to stay small enough that the world wouldn't find me again. I don't remember where I was born. Somewhere high up in the mountains, I think. Somewhere the air was thin and sharp, and the nights were too long for a pup like me to feel anything but scared. I remember a cage. I remember chains. I remember hands that didn't know gentleness, only smoke and fire and pain. They called me things I didn't understand, but their anger made the words sharp anyway. My ribs still carry the memory of those days. There were nights when I thought, if I close my eyes and don't open them, maybe that'll be better. And then came the morning when everything changed. It was late fall when she found me. The leaves had all but given up on their colors, and the rain came steady, thin, cold sheets that made the forest floor soft and unforgiving. I had crawled under a fallen pine, not because I thought it would save me, but because I was tired. I couldn't walk. My back leg dragged behind me like a useless branch. The burns on my side had started to blister, and I hadn't eaten in 2, maybe 3 days. Time didn't matter then, but sound did. I heard her voice first, light, small, sweet, like springtime cutting through frost. "Daddy, shh. Did you hear that?" There was a rustle in the underbrush. My nose twitched, but I didn't lift my head. I didn't have the strength. Another voice followed hers, deeper, worn with age and worry. "No, honey, just the wind. Stay close." Footsteps. I waited for pain, for shouting, but instead, I felt warmth. "It's okay," she whispered, kneeling just outside the log. "We're not gonna hurt you." I wanted to believe her, but belief was dangerous, so I didn't move. And then, through the thick fog of my senses, I felt something soft. Her hand, resting on my paw. "He's hurt bad, Daddy," she said. "Like I was after the accident. We have to help him." I opened my eyes then, just a crack. Enough to see her. Little thing. Big eyes, scratched knees, hair in messy braids, like she'd tied them herself. She smelled like wildflowers and bubble gum. She looked at me the way no human had ever looked at me before, like I mattered. Her father, a tall man with kind eyes and calloused hands, crouched beside her. He studied me for a long moment. I saw the flicker in his face. Hesitation, concern, calculation. Then something changed. His shoulders dropped. "Okay," he said gently. "But we have to be very careful." He took off his flannel jacket, folded it carefully, and slid it under me. I didn't growl. I didn't fight. I just let him. My body was too tired to argue, and something about the girl's touch told me maybe it was safe now. The man lifted me slowly, arms steady like he'd done this before. I heard the girl gasp. "What should we name him?" he asked as he carried me down the trail. "Bruno," she said without missing a beat. The man chuckled. "Bruno?" She nodded. "It means protector, right?" He smiled, but didn't correct her. "Sounds perfect." That was the day I became someone again. The ride back to their place was a blur of smells and pain and warmth. They didn't go to a vet hospital. They went to a place called Willow Glen Animal Sanctuary. The man, Dr. Grant Carson, I'd later learn, used to work there before. Well, before life pulled the rug out from under him. He was a veterinarian once, a good one. But after Lily's accident, he couldn't go back. Too many memories, too many ghosts. Doctor. Sarah, the woman who ran the sanctuary, met us at the door. She took one look at me, and her face darkened. "Someone did this deliberately," she said through tight lips. "We'll report it. But first, let's see if we can save him." They laid me on a metal table. It was cold, but Lily was there, sitting on a stool next to me, whispering little things I didn't understand. Things like, "It's okay now, you're safe," and "You're gonna get better, just like me." And somehow, I started to believe her. The pain didn't go away. The burns stung. My leg felt like fire. But for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to hide. They came every day. Lily and her father. He'd carry her into the sanctuary, her little helmet strapped on just in case the seizures came back. She'd bring me books. Kids' books, the kind with animals and bright colors. She'd read them out loud, stumbling through the big words, proud of the small ones. Sometimes she'd sneak me bits of sandwich, even when Dr. Sarah said, "No people food." I pretended I didn't like peanut butter. Truth is, I loved it. And every time I heard that high, childlike laugh, something in me healed. Weeks passed, then months. I got stronger. My burns faded. My limp grew less noticeable. I still couldn't run far, but I could stand and sit and wag my tail when Lily came into view. And something else started happening. I began to notice things, little shifts. Before Lily had an episode, before her eyes glazed or her body stiffened, I'd feel it, a change in her scent, a tension in the air. My instincts would scream, "Something's coming." One day, in the middle of a reading session, her fingers began to twitch. I barked, loud, sharp. "Doctor." Carson rushed in, caught her just before she fell. It was a light seizure, but he looked at me afterward like I was some kind of miracle. "You knew," he whispered, kneeling beside me. "How the hell did you know?" I didn't know how to answer. I just pressed my head against his chest. From then on, I stayed closer. I watched harder. And every time she showed signs, I warned them. Every single time. Dr. Sarah brought it up first. "You know he's doing what some service dogs take years of training to learn?" "Doctor?" Carson nodded. "But he's never been trained. That makes it even more extraordinary. They talked about programs, about costs, about things I didn't understand. But I understood this. Lily needed me, and I needed her. One night, I lay on her bed, curled at her feet, listening to the gentle rhythm of her breath. She was mumbling in her sleep, whispering a dream. I couldn't catch the words, but they were soft, sweet. That's when I made my promise. Whatever comes, I'll stay. I won't leave her. Not for anything. Not even death. Looking back now, I realize that moment, that quiet vow I made in the dark, was the moment I stopped being broken. Because I had found the one thing I'd never had before, a reason. I wasn't born to be anyone's guardian. At least, I didn't think so. My world before Lily was nothing but survival. Eat when you can, hide when you must, and never trust the hands that reach for you. But something happened after that winter. After she and her father pulled me from the edge, I began to feel again. At first it was just warmth, then it was trust, then something deeper, like loyalty wrapped in light. And then I realized, whatever hole was in me, she was filling it, slowly, gently, without ever trying. After I regained strength, I wasn't kept in the exam room anymore. Doctor. Sarah set up a recovery kennel for me at the sanctuary, next to a big window where sunlight poured in each morning. But Lily, she came every day after school, rain or shine. Helmet on, cheeks red from the mountain wind, and that same little book bag bouncing behind her. She'd open the gate like she owned the place, because in truth her spirit did, and she'd plop down right in front of my bed, legs crossed, elbows poking out of her puffy coat. She'd pull out a book, and off we'd go, into magical forests, into outer space, into pirate ships and candy castles. I didn't understand the words, not in the way people do, but I understood her tone, her cadence, the way she giggled when the plot got silly, and her voice dropped when something scary was coming. She wasn't reading to me. She was sharing herself with me, piece by piece, chapter by chapter. One afternoon, she came in quieter than usual. No stories, no skipping, just sat there, arms wrapped around her knees, face tilted toward the window. I walked over, well, more of a hobble then, and sat beside her. She didn't look at me right away. "Had a seizure during math today," she said softly. It wasn't even a big one, but Miss Duncan made the whole class stop. Everyone stared. I hate when they do that. I leaned into her, resting my head on her shoulder. She sighed. "They don't get it, Bruno. They act like I'm weird or broken." She scratched behind my ear. "But you never do. You don't care if I fall or if I forget words or if I wear a helmet like a goofball." She turned and finally looked into my eyes. "You just wait for me to get back up." I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just held her gaze. That was the first time I realized. She wasn't just healing me. I was healing her, too. Things changed after that. "Doctor." Sarah started tracking something strange. Lily's seizures, while still there, became less frequent, less intense. Sometimes she'd go days without one, then a whole week, and every time, right before a change, before her body would stiffen or her eyes would glaze, I felt it. I could smell it. A shift in her scent, like rain about to fall. My ears would twitch. My body would go rigid. I'd bark, sharp and loud. One time, maybe two. The first time I did it in front of strangers, they thought I was being aggressive, until they saw her start to slump. That moment, when Dr. Carson caught her before she hit the floor, was when people began to believe. "This dog is warning us," he told Dr. Sarah that evening. "I'm telling you, he knows before anything shows up." Dr. Sarah studied me like I was some sort of puzzle. "It's not impossible," she said. "There have been documented cases. Seizure alert dogs, even untrained ones, can develop that kind of sensitivity." He nodded. "Yeah, but usually after months, sometimes years. Bruno, he's just doing it. No commands, no cues. He just knows." Dr. Carson looked at me that night, like he was seeing something sacred. After that, he started bringing Lily to my kennel less. Not because he didn't trust me, but because he wanted me at their house. "I think he needs to be with her full time," he said, so I moved in. They cleared a corner of Lily's room for my bed, but I never used it. I slept at the foot of hers, or beside it, sometimes right in the middle of the floor, depending on the night. I started waking when she did, walking when she walked. I learned to watch her breathing, her hands, her eyes. I learned the rhythms of her health better than any machine. Some nights she couldn't sleep, so she'd whisper stories to me in the dark. Other nights she'd cry, quiet little sobs into her pillow, trying not to wake anyone. Those nights, I'd rest my nose against her cheek until the tears stopped. The world outside didn't always understand Lily. At school, the other kids were unsure. Some were kind, others weren't. At church, people smiled a little too hard when they saw her helmet. In town, folks whispered when her dad carried her during a seizure. People are like that. Even good ones sometimes don't know how to hold space for pain. But me? I didn't care about awkward glances or misunderstood conditions. I cared about her. Every step of her journey I was there. One spring day, we visited a small community event, a local art fair downtown. Lily was wearing her favorite green dress and a necklace she'd made from beads and string. She was doing well. No seizures for almost 10 days. I stayed right beside her, leash loose but connected, vest strapped snug to my chest. Suddenly I felt it. The shift. My ears perked, my body tensed. I gave one bark. "Doctor." Carson looked up immediately. "Lily!" She was already starting to lean. He caught her. The crowd backed away, uncertain. A nurse passing by stepped in. Someone else called 911. But me. I just stayed right there, nose to her hand, heartbeat steady. She came out of it quickly, thank God. But word spread about the dog who barked before a child collapsed. That was the moment Chief Donna Myers from the Elm Ridge Police Department reached out. She'd been at the fair that day, visiting her niece. A week later, she knocked on our door. "I've seen a lot of service dogs, Grant," she said. "But this one, he's something else." Dr. Carson raised an eyebrow. "He's not trained." "I know," she said. "That's what makes it so impressive." She paused. "We'd like to offer you a spot in our part-time K9 program. We'll handle training, expenses. He could be useful in missing person cases, maybe even medical detection. You'd retain full guardianship. He'd stay with Lily." Dr. Carson didn't answer right away. He looked at me, then at Lily, sitting on the couch, quietly stroking my back. "I'll think about it," he said. "But I think deep down, We all knew the answer already. I wasn't going anywhere. Not from her. Not from the only place I'd ever been whole. It started with one demonstration. Nothing fancy, no fireworks, just me, my nose, and a quiet little field behind the Elmridge Police Department. I remember the way the wind carried the scent of pine that morning, how the gravel crunched under Chief Meyer's boots as she motioned to the officer beside her. "Hide the capsule out there, Lowry," she said, pointing toward the shed and the line of parked cruisers. "Let's see if the mutt's got a nose for this." Mutt? I remember thinking. I'd been called worse. Officer Lowry took a small metal canister laced with imitation narcotics and disappeared behind a row of patrol cars. I didn't flinch, didn't follow, just sat, eyes on the chief, tail flicking once. She raised an eyebrow. "And he's got discipline?" Dr. Carson was standing beside her, arms crossed, trying not to look nervous. "He's not your usual candidate," he said, "but he's not your usual dog either." I was still getting used to wearing the vest, K9 stitched in white across the back. It felt strange at first, like armor I hadn't earned. But Lily had helped me into it that morning, her fingers threading the straps with gentle precision. "You're official now," she whispered. They'll see what I already know. So when Chief Myers finally gave the command, "Search," I bolted like lightning through dry grass. I didn't sniff randomly. I didn't circle or chase shadows. I locked in on the scent and followed it like it was written in my bones. It led me under one cruiser, past a trash can, and straight to the rear bumper of the oldest car in the lot. I barked once, sat down, then looked back. Lowry stepped forward, popped the trunk, and let out a low whistle. "You've got to be kidding me." Inside, tucked behind a spare tire, was the canister. The chief didn't say anything at first, just watched me. Her eyes were sharp, but not cold. After a few seconds, she crouched down in front of me, studying my face like she was trying to read a message buried beneath my fur. "No training, huh?" Dr. Carson shook his head. "Only what he's taught himself." She stood. "Let's talk about a schedule." That's how I became an official member of the Elmridge K9 program. Part-time, of course. I still had Lily to care for. That came first. Always. They started me slow. Detection drills, tracking exercises, basic commands. I wasn't the youngest candidate on the roster, but I was the most focused. I didn't chase balls. I didn't bark for attention. I wasn't in it for play. I was in it for her. Every morning that I trained, Lily would wait at the station after school, sitting in the break room with a coloring book and a peanut butter sandwich in her lunchbox. The officers adored her. They gave her little badges, let her sit in the cruisers, even taught her the radio codes. She liked Officer Lowry best. He had a dry sense of humor and wore goofy socks with tiny pizzas on them. But what really mattered was this. He treated her like she wasn't broken, like she was just a smart, curious kid who happened to have a brave dog. Chief Myers didn't go easy on me, and I respected her for that. She ran me through scenarios most dogs twice my experience would have fumbled. Blind searches, firearms detection, crowd control, missing person drills. "You sure he's not secretly a Navy SEAL?" one officer muttered during a tracking session where I found a buried phone in 6 minutes flat. But it wasn't about impressing them. It was about proving something, not to them, not even to myself, to Lily. Because every time I came home from the station and saw her waiting at the door, arms stretched wide, helmet slightly tilted from a long school day, she'd say the same thing. "My hero's home." And I'd press my head against her chest, feeling that fluttery little heartbeat. Steady, warm, mine to protect. The local newspaper caught wind of my story. Abused rescue dog becomes part-time police K9 and full-time medical alert companion. They ran a piece on me and Lily. Took a photo of us in the backyard, her sitting cross-legged in the grass, me beside her, vest on, head up, alert. She had one hand resting gently on my back. The headline read, "Not just a good boy. Elmridge's quietest guardian." The town started recognizing us. Kids at school stopped teasing Lily. Instead, they'd wave at me in the drop-off lane. Parents asked Dr. Carson about service dog programs. People donated to the sanctuary where I'd recovered. But recognition didn't mean ease. The training was tough, and sometimes, even though I passed every test they threw at me, I'd get looks. From other handlers, from higher-ups. I could hear their whispers, smell the skepticism on their breath. "He's a rescue, right? Burned, abused, that's risky. Too much trauma, unpredictable." They thought I didn't hear, but I did. Still, I didn't growl. I didn't react. I just kept working, watching, listening, alerting. And each time I warned them before Lily's seizures, before the tension, the silence, the fall, I earned another inch of belief. Once, during a school field trip to the botanical gardens, Lily was walking with her classmates when I felt the change. I barked once, loud and sharp. The teacher turned. I lunged toward Lily, just as her knees buckled. I caught her mid-fall, braced under her body as she seized. The paramedic said later, if he hadn't cushioned her, she'd have hit her head on the stone path. They gave me a medal for that one. A silly thing, shiny and light. But Lily wore it around her neck the next day and told everyone it belonged to both of us. Later that week, I overheard Dr. Carson and Chief Myers talking in the parking lot. "He's the best we've got," the chief said. "Doesn't surprise me," Dr. Carson replied. "He still sleeps next to her?" "Every night," the chief nodded. "Then I trust him more than I trust any piece of tech in this building." That meant something. More than a medal, more than applause. But through all the praise, through the demonstrations and drills and public events, I never forgot the truth. They said I was just a dog, but Lily never did. She knew better. She saw what I could do before anyone else ever did, because before I was a hero to them, I was already hers. You get used to peace. That's the truth of it. You don't mean to, but when the hard days start to fade and the calm ones stack up, you start believing maybe the storm has passed for good. Maybe you've earned the quiet. That's what made it so cruel when it all came back. We had a good run. A few full months where Lily smiled more than she winced, where her helmet sat unused on its hook by the door, where I'd lie at her feet while she colored, and her dad would sip coffee in the kitchen and hum an old Willie Nelson tune without even realizing he was doing it. We believed we'd made it through. And then the seizures came back. But this time, they came back meaner. It started with little things. A longer pause between her words, a twitch in her fingers. She didn't notice, but I did. I'd bark, low and unsure, and Dr. Carson would check her vitals, adjust her meds. Nothing major, not at first. Then one night, she didn't wake me up for our bedtime story. I waited, rested my chin on her covers, eyes locked on her face. She stirred a little, mumbled something. Then, suddenly, her body arched, sharp and violent, and she let out a sound that didn't belong in a child's throat. I barked. Hard, twice. Then 3 times. Her father came flying in, feet bare, shirt half-buttoned. He didn't panic. Grant Carson never did. But I saw the fear move through him like lightning. He cradled her against his chest while her muscles fought against him, while her eyes rolled and her breath came in gasps. That episode lasted 5 minutes. The next one lasted 12. And then 20. He made the call the morning after the 3rd long seizure. "I want her seen by a specialist," he told the nurse at the Elmridge clinic. Not just our local guy. I want Dr. Eliza Montgomery in Denver. She's the best." The nurse hesitated. "Dr. Carson, your insurance?" "I know what my insurance does," he snapped, then exhaled. "Just make the referral." But when we arrived at Elmridge General for the consult, we didn't meet Dr. Montgomery. We met Dr. Raymond Clark. He looked like he'd been chiseled from ice. Hair silver but sharp. Eyes that didn't blink enough. He didn't shake Grant's hand. He barely looked at Lily. And when he glanced at me, sitting dutifully at her side, he sighed like I was just one more problem he didn't want to deal with. "I reviewed the EEG scans," he said, flipping through papers like they were coupons. "The child's condition is progressive, likely intractable epilepsy. We can try modifying the medication regimen, but long-term outcomes aren't promising." Dr. Carson straightened. "With respect, that's not your call to make. I asked for a transfer to Denver. You've blocked it twice." "She's not stable for transport," Clark said, without looking up. "Besides, even if she were, the cost would be prohibitive. You'd be risking a great deal for very little in return." Lily was sitting on the exam table, swinging her legs, quiet. Too quiet. I wanted to bite the man, I really did. But instead, I just inched closer to her, my body between her and the cold weight of his words. Back at home, Dr. Carson made calls, argued, pleaded, hit brick wall after brick wall. I'd sit with Lily at night, her fingers resting in my fur, both of us listening to her father's voice rise and fall behind the bedroom door. Then came the night. She didn't wake up. We'd had a good day. She'd smiled, told me a new story, painted a picture of me with angel wings and a firefighter's hat. I'd wagged my tail so hard the paper flew across the room. That night, after dinner, she said she was tired. Just tired. She never woke up. I knew before the house did. I felt the stillness in her, the strange quiet, the absence. I barked once, then again. Dr. Carson came running, and when he saw her limp body, no convulsions this time, just a silence that didn't feel right, he laid her flat, started his checks, whispered her name over and over. The ambulance came fast. Lights painted the walls red and white as they pulled away. I tried to leap in, but Officer Lowry held me back. "I'm sorry, boy," he whispered. "They need room in the back." I waited on the porch all night, listening for her heartbeat in the wind. By morning, there was nothing to hear. Dr. Carson returned just after dawn. He looked older somehow, smaller. His hands hung uselessly at his sides. "She's gone," he said to no one in particular. "Respiratory failure. No neurological response." I howled then. Not a bark, not a warning. A sound ripped from the core of me. Raw, primal, devastated. "Doctor." Carson collapsed beside me on the porch. I leaned into him, and for the first time since I'd known him, the man sobbed. The next few days passed like a fog. Arrangements, paperwork, voices I didn't recognize offering condolences I didn't understand. They put her in a white dress. They laid her in a box too small for someone who carried so much light. They scheduled the service. I was taken to the K-9 facility during the preparations. "Just until it's over," someone said. He shouldn't be there for the funeral. But I knew better. I knew she wasn't gone. Not really. Because that night, 3 days after the hospital pronounced her dead, I curled up in my kennel and closed my eyes, and I heard it. A faint pulse, a familiar scent. Not memory, present, alive. And I knew as sure as I knew my own name. Lily wasn't finished. Not yet. They thought I didn't understand. that I wouldn't notice. But I did. I watched from behind the chain-link fence as they loaded Lily's small white casket into the back of the hearse. I could see Dr. Carson's shoulders tremble as he placed a hand on the polished wood and whispered something I couldn't hear. I saw Officer Lowry standing off to the side, hat in hand, face tight and unreadable. And I saw Hank, her uncle, the man who had only just started to come around again, clenching his jaw so hard I thought it might snap. And me, I just stood there, motionless. But inside, I was a storm. I wasn't supposed to be there in that cage. I was supposed to be beside her, like always. My paws on the ground, my head beside her hand. I should have been allowed to say goodbye. Except I didn't believe in goodbye. Not yet. Because that morning, I had felt something. Something that didn't belong at a funeral. Hope. Faint, yes, but real. When I woke, the sun wasn't up yet. The sky was a dull blue smear behind the pines. But I heard her, felt her, really. A memory at first, I thought. Just a whisper of scent. But it lingered. It stayed. And then it moved. Not through the air, not physically, but through me. It's hard to explain. I'm just a dog. I don't have words for the kinds of things I feel. I can't draw you a graph or show you a scan. But my body knows. My instincts know. And that morning, every part of me screamed, "She's not gone." I pawed at the gate of my kennel, first gently, then harder. No one came. I barked, whined, nothing. So I did the only thing I could do. I broke out. It wasn't graceful or quiet. It hurt. I slammed my body against the latch until it cracked loose, then ran, sprinted down the gravel lot, through the back service road, across the open field that led to Elmridge Cemetery. I didn't stop, not even when the pavement tore my pads, not when my lungs burned, not when I heard the shouts behind me. I ran like her life depended on it, because maybe it did. By the time I reached the cemetery, the service had just begun. Dozens of people lined the narrow path, all dressed in muted colors, heads bowed under the weight of sadness. The coffin sat on a raised platform, framed by white flowers and trembling hands. Dr. Carson stood at the front, face pale, lips pressed shut. I broke through the hedges at the edge of the grounds. People gasped. Some stepped back. Others called out. But I didn't hear them. I saw only one thing. Her. Not her face. Not her body. But her presence. Inside that coffin. Alive. I leapt. The box wasn't high, but the leap took everything I had. I landed hard, paws skidding slightly on the smooth surface. The flowers shifted. The wood creaked, and I lay down, chest flat, ears forward, listening. I didn't bark. Not yet. I pressed my body against the lid. And there it was. Not a beat. Not a pulse you could feel with fingers, but something deeper. A flicker. A presence. Like standing in the woods and sensing the storm before the clouds come. Like feeling heat before the sun rises. She was still there. I looked up, straight into Dr. Carson's eyes. And I saw it. The flicker. The doubt. The question no father ever wants to ask, let alone answer. What if they're wrong? The crowd began to stir. The funeral director pushed through, face pale and tight. "We need to remove the animal," he said, voice low but firm. "This is highly inappropriate." "No," Dr. Carson said, quietly at first. "Sir, with respect, I said no," he repeated. His voice cracked on the second word, but it was Hank who moved next. He stepped forward, rough leather jacket zipped tight, sunglasses pulled off. "Look at him," he said. "He's not grieving. That's alert posture." I barked then. Once. Sharp. Clean. The bark I'd trained myself to use only when it mattered most. The crowd fell silent. Dr. Carson took a step forward. His face was pale, but his jaw was set. "Open it," he whispered. The funeral director froze. "Sir, we can't." "She's my daughter," Grant said. "And that's her dog. If he says something's wrong, then we open the goddamn box." Murmurs erupted. The pastor tried to intervene, soft words about dignity and grief, but no one listened. Not really, because I was still lying there, perfectly still, eyes wide, muscles tense. I barked again. That did it. Officer Lowry pushed through the crowd, nodding at the junior cop beside him. "Do it," he said. The latches clicked, the lid lifted, and silence fell. There she was. Lily. Pale, still, but not cold, not lifeless. Her lips moved. It was barely a twitch, a breath. But I saw it. Her father saw it. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. "She's breathing," someone whispered. Dr. Carson dropped to his knees beside her, pressed his fingers to her neck. "She's alive," he choked. Oh God, she's alive." The funeral director backed away. People started to cry. Others stood frozen, unsure if they were witnessing a miracle or a mistake. I stayed where I was. Didn't bark. Didn't move. Just stayed. Because I had never left her. Not when the doctors gave up. Not when the machines went quiet. Not when the papers were signed and the mourners gathered. Because I had felt it all along. She was still here. And she needed me. That day, something shifted in Elmridge. Not just in Lily's story, but in all of us. People started to believe again. In instinct. In miracles. In the bond between a girl and her dog. And though she still had a long road ahead, machines and specialists and questions no one could answer, I knew one thing for certain. We weren't finished. Not even close. I don't remember the sound of the lid creaking open, or the gasps that followed. I don't remember the birds flying off from the nearby oak trees when I barked. But I remember her scent. It hit me like sunlight after a long winter. Not just the smell of her skin, or the shampoo that always left a hint of strawberries behind her ears. No, this was different. Fainter. Like something hiding underneath the layers of death they'd mistaken for final. She was there. She was there. When they opened the casket and saw her chest rise, just barely, everything around me vanished. The murmurs, the panic, the funeral director's pale face turning paler, even Hank's voice somewhere behind me saying, "Jesus, I think she's breathing." I didn't move. I kept my place on that lid until Officer Lowry laid a firm hand on my back and whispered, "Good boy. We got her now." Only then did I rise and step back, but not far. I stood right at the edge of the coffin, watching Dr. Carson kneel beside his daughter. His hands were shaking. I'd never seen that before, not from him. He was always so steady, so sure. But in that moment, he was undone. "Lily," he whispered, his fingers brushing her cheek. "Lily, baby, can you hear me?" Her lips moved again. No sound, just the smallest quiver. But it was enough. He turned to the paramedic who had just arrived, breathless and wide-eyed. "We need oxygen now, and I want her on a monitor right now." More people poured into the scene. EMTs, officers, neighbors. I stayed close, weaving between legs, ignoring the hands that tried to shoo me away. The paramedics lifted Lily from the casket with the kind of care you only give to something holy. Her little arm fell to the side as they placed her on the stretcher, and I could see now that her fingers were twitching. Barely, but they were. She was fighting. The funeral had become a rescue operation. The casket sat open and empty. People didn't know what to say. Some cried. Others just stared as if reality had tilted and no one had found their footing yet. The funeral director tried to take control again. He stepped forward, clipboard clutched to his chest, voice strained. "There are legal protocols, state health guidelines. We can't just—" Dr. Carson stood up, eyes blazing. "You tried to bury my daughter alive," he said. "You can take your clipboard and—" "Grant," Hank said, stepping between them gently. "Let's get her to the hospital first, then we can come back and yell later." The ambulance doors opened. I trotted behind the stretcher as they slid Lily inside. One of the paramedics tried to block me. "Sorry, dog can't come." Dr. Carson didn't even hesitate. "He comes." The medic hesitated, looked to Lowry. "He's not just a dog," Lowry said. "He's the one who saved her." The medic nodded once and stepped aside. I jumped in, sat down beside the gurney, and laid my head near her hand. The doors shut behind us. The sirens started. The whole world narrowed to the steady rhythm of the wheels rolling beneath us and the whir of the oxygen tank beside her. Every so often, I'd bark, not loud, just enough to remind them, she's still here. She's still fighting. "Doctor." Carson sat on the bench across from me, hands clasped together, whispering something over and over. A prayer, maybe, or a memory. I don't know. But I knew what he was feeling, because I was feeling it too. We'd come so close to losing her, and part of me, no matter how small, was afraid it still wasn't over. They wheeled her into the ER at Elmridge General. Nurses moved like lightning. Doctors barked orders. Tubes. Monitors. Lights. I followed until they tried to stop me at the double doors of the trauma wing. "She's a minor," one of them said. "Only family allowed." I growled, not loud. Just enough. Chief Myers arrived just in time. "Let him through," she said, flashing her badge. "That dog is closer than blood right now." And just like that, I was in. They set her up in Trauma Room 3. Hooked wires to her chest, tubes to her nose. Machines beeped and blinked. Dr. Peterson, the attending neurologist, stood at the foot of the bed, flipping through a chart like he was reading a restaurant menu. He didn't look at her. Didn't see her. "She presents signs of post-ictal catalepsy," he muttered. "But no meaningful neural response. I recommend we begin end-of-life discussions." Dr. Carson stepped forward. "End of life?" "Doctor, please. I understand this is difficult, but her vitals are weak. Neurologically, she's flatlining. We can keep her on support, but—" "You're wrong," I barked. He looked at me then, finally, but not like a man who had just been challenged, like a man annoyed a dog had interrupted his day. "She moved," Dr. Carson snapped. "At the funeral. Her lips moved. Her fingers twitched." "Reflexes," Peterson said. "Residual electrical misfires. It happens. Especially post-mortem." "She wasn't dead," Hank growled from the doorway. Peterson ignored him. "Mr. Carson, I'm advising palliative measures." Let her pass comfortably. Dr. Carson looked ready to explode, but Lily moaned. Just a whisper. Just a sound, but real. Every head in the room snapped to her. Her eyes were fluttering. I stood up straight, ears high, tail stiff. Peterson's face went white. "That's not a reflex," the nurse whispered. "She's responding." Everything changed after that. A second neurologist was called in. Tests were ordered. An airlift arranged to Denver. The doctors at Children's Memorial agreed to take her. Dr. Montgomery herself was waiting. As they rolled Lily down the hall toward the helicopter pad, I walked beside her, never leaving her side. The wind whipped around us as the blades of the chopper spun to life. Just before they lifted her onto the aircraft, one of the paramedics turned to Dr. Carson. "I'm sorry, but the dog can't go on the helicopter." He looked at me. I looked back. Then Lily's hand twitched again, fingers curling weakly toward my fur. "Doctor." Carson turned to the medic and said, "Then I'm not going either." The medic hesitated. "Sir, he stays with her, or I don't sign." They let me on. Of course they did. Because by then, even the skeptics had seen the truth. I wasn't just her dog. I was her heartbeat, her warning bell, her witness. And no one, not doctors, not machines, not death itself, was going to separate us again. They say some moments change the course of a lifetime. I don't know much about human sayings, but I know this. That moment, when they opened the lid and air touched her face again, rewrote the ending they had already written for Lily. From where I stood in the chopper, pressed tight against the side of the stretcher, I could hear the hum of the rotors above and the low chatter of the medical team. But I heard something else too. A sound only I could understand. Her breath. It was shallow, uneven. But it was there. It was real. "Doctor." Carson sat opposite me, both hands gripping the edges of the seat as if bracing for something worse than turbulence. His eyes never left her. Not once. Not even when the nurse beside him tapped his arm and said, "We're landing in 4. He just nodded and leaned closer to whisper, "Hold on, baby. Just hold on a little longer." The moment we touched down at Children's Memorial in Denver, a team was already waiting on the roof. They moved fast, faster than any humans I'd seen, and yet not a single one pushed me aside. Maybe they knew better. Maybe someone had warned them. That dog doesn't just follow orders. He feels her. They wheeled her into the pediatric intensive care unit, past rooms filled with quiet beeping and soft overhead lights, past doctors with tired eyes and parents with tired hearts. I stayed right beside the gurney until they made a turn into a procedure bay. "Only medical personnel from here," someone said. I paused. Then Dr. Carson looked back at them and said, "He stays." A nurse hesitated, then opened the door wider. I trotted in. "Doctor." Eliza Montgomery was already there, hands gloved, voice calm. She looked nothing like the doctors back home. Her hair was silver but not cold. Her eyes were sharp but not cruel. She glanced at me, then back at Lily and said, "Let's get to work." They ran tests for hours. Hooked her up to machines I didn't recognize. Tubes, wires, IVs. One of them took blood. Another adjusted a ventilator. Through it all, I sat near the corner of the room, not moving, not blinking, just listening. I could tell by the way the nurses moved, by the way Dr. Montgomery furrowed her brow, that Lily's condition was complicated. Not just a seizure, not just a fainting spell, something deeper, something dangerous. She's in a cataleptic state, Dr. Montgomery explained later that night. It mimics brain death, slows all vital functions. Most monitors miss it unless you're looking for it specifically. Dr. Carson rubbed his face with both hands. So she's not. She's alive, she said gently. But we're in uncharted territory now. He sat in the chair beside Lily's bed and leaned forward, elbows on knees. I almost buried her. She knelt beside him. You didn't. That matters. And I stayed at the foot of the bed, ears perked, ready. The next few days blurred together. Doctors came and went. Specialists arrived from other cities. Dr. Montgomery stayed at the center of it all, always composed, always focused. Lily's body remained still, her skin pale, but her heart kept beating. And every so often, when the machines lagged or the numbers dipped, I would bark, soft and low, one sharp note, and the nurses would check the monitors and see what I already knew. She was shifting, changing, coming back. Once, in the middle of the night, I heard her lips part. No words, just a breath that sounded different. More awake, more present. I stepped closer, laid my head on the bed beside her hand. Her fingers twitched. Dr. Montgomery was in the room a moment later. I swear, he knows before the rest of us. One nurse whispered, watching me. By the 5th day, a new sound joined the chorus of soft machines and hushed voices. A moan. It came from Lily's throat. Dry, hoarse, barely audible, but it stopped the room. Doctor. Carson sprang to his feet. Lily? Her eyelids fluttered, not quite open, not quite closed. Her face twitched. She's responding to voice, Dr. Montgomery confirmed. That's a good sign. I barked once, sat tall, alert. A few hours later, Lily's lips moved again. No one heard what she said at first, but I was already climbing onto the bed, tail stiff, ears forward. She turned her head ever so slightly. Her eyes, those soft gray-blue eyes, opened just a sliver. And then, her lips moved. One word. Bruno. The nurses gasped. Doctor. Carson pressed a hand to his mouth. I leaned in closer, my nose touching hers. And she smiled. Just barely. Just enough. The weight in the room lifted like fog on a spring morning. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I saw light again. Not sunlight. Not lamplight. Her light. The child they'd pronounced gone was still here, fighting, breathing, living. I didn't know what came next. None of us did. Her body was still weak. Her brain still healing. The road ahead would be long, and there were still shadows we couldn't see the ends of. But that moment, that smile, that whisper of my name, that was enough. They opened the coffin, and she breathed. Recovery isn't a switch. It doesn't flip clean from dark to light, from gone to back. It comes in waves, quiet, uncertain, sometimes cruel. You get a little hope, and then it slips again. You think she's awake, and the next day she's silent. You see her hand move, and then for hours, nothing. But I never left. Not once. The nurses joked that I'd become part of the unit. Bruno's station, One of them called the square of floor between the window and Lily's bed, where I kept watch. Dr. Montgomery had to sign special paperwork, so I could stay in the room around the clock. The hospital had never allowed an animal to sleep beside a patient in the ICU before. But I wasn't just an animal. They understood that now. Lily's fight wasn't just against seizures anymore. It was against a body that had been too still for too long, muscles that had begun to forget movement, a brain that had flickered back on but still struggled to find its footing. Every breath she took was a battle. Every sound she made was a signal flare from the edge of somewhere none of us could follow. But I followed the signs. I always did. Doctor. Carson barely slept. His face grew thin, eyes bruised with exhaustion, beard ragged. He only left to use the restroom or answer calls in the hallway. The rest of the time, he sat in a wooden chair beside her bed, his hand in hers, his voice whispering stories she might or might not be hearing. She used to dream about horses, he said one evening, rubbing her knuckles softly. Said she wanted to ride through the mountains with a purple saddle and a peanut butter sandwich in her pocket, just in case she got hungry. He chuckled quietly, then wiped at his face. "You'd like that, huh, Bruno?" I thumped my tail once against the floor, just enough to let him know I was listening too. Sometimes Hank came by. He brought takeout in white paper bags and sat with Grant in silence. He wasn't good with words, but he showed up. That mattered. His presence filled a kind of space in the room, like an anchor thrown down in deep water. "She's got your fight," he said to Grant one night. "And her mama's light. That's a hell of a combination." Dr. Montgomery remained steady, professional. But even she began to soften. I'd catch her checking in late, after her shift should have ended. Standing just inside the doorway, watching Lily breathe. "Her vitals are holding," she said on the 6th day. "Still shallow but steady. Brain activity is present, inconsistent, but there." She paused. "She's not just surviving, Mr. Carson. She's trying to come back." It was one of the few times I saw Grant let himself cry in front of her. Each morning, new tests came. Reflexes, pupillary responses, brain scans. I didn't understand the machines, but I understood the pattern. More people smiled. More people leaned in, hopeful. On the 9th day, Lily opened her eyes for real. Not a flutter, not a flicker. Wide, clear, present. She didn't speak, not right away. But when Dr. Carson whispered, "Hey, sweet pea," her eyes filled with tears. She looked at him, then slowly turned her head to me, and she smiled. I leapt up gently onto the edge of the bed, nudging her hand with my nose. She tried to move her fingers. They twitched, then curled around my fur. It was the smallest squeeze, but I felt it like thunder. After that, the real work began. Speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy. Whole teams were assigned to her. They wheeled in bright machines, flashcards, toys, mirrors. Lily blinked at them, then at me, like asking, "What's all this?" "You've been through a lot," one of the therapists said gently. "We're going to help your body remember how to be strong." She nodded, slow but sure. Some days were better than others. Sometimes she could sit upright for 10 minutes. Other times she couldn't even keep her eyes open. But she never quit. Not once. Every setback was met with a shrug and a whisper. "I'll try again tomorrow." And through it all, I stayed by her side. I learned to walk alongside her wheelchair. Learned which beeps on the machines meant trouble. learned that even when her face looked calm, something could be wrong beneath the surface. One night, just past midnight, I felt it again, the scent shift, that storm in the air. I barked twice, not loud, just enough. The night nurse ran in, checked the monitor, then her blood pressure. "She's dropping," she said, voice tight. "Call Dr. Montgomery." They adjusted her meds, changed the oxygen settings. Crisis averted. Because I'd warned them. Again. The news started to spread beyond the hospital. A story ran in the local paper. Dog detects seizure before machines, a bond that saved a life. People sent letters, donated to the sanctuary where I'd been rescued. Even the mayor showed up one afternoon to shake Dr. Carson's hand and take a photo beside Lily's bed. "She's a miracle," he said. "Doctor." Carson smiled. "She's a fighter." "No," the mayor corrected, pointing to me. "That's the miracle." I didn't care about the attention. I only cared that she was still here, still breathing, still fighting, still Lily. One breath at a time, she climbed back, and I stayed with her. One breath at a time. I've watched a lot of hands in my life. Hands that struck, hands that trembled, hands that reached down with food or with fear. But Lily's hands, those were different. They were small, sure, but strong in a way you don't expect from a child. Her fingers always moved with purpose, drawing, braiding, petting, holding. So when they didn't move at all, we all felt the loss. In those first days back from the edge, her hands were still as stone, pale, resting like forgotten things on top of hospital sheets. Doctors called it muscle atrophy, post-cataleptic paralysis. They said it might pass, or it might not. But I didn't listen to the maybes, because I knew her. I knew her better than any monitor. It was a Wednesday afternoon when it happened. Lily had been dozing for most of the day. The therapists had tried a few arm movements in the morning, but her response was limited. I sat nearby, my chin resting on the mattress, watching the slow rhythm of her chest. The TV was on low in the corner. Some wildlife documentary with wolves trotting through snow. But I wasn't watching it. I was watching her. And then I saw it. Her left pinky twitched. Not just once. It curled. Barely. But it curled. I blinked. Stood up straighter. Leaned in. Her ring finger moved next, like it was trying to remember how. I barked, not loud, just enough to alert the room. The nurse sitting across the way turned her head. "What is it, Bruno?" I nudged Lily's hand with my nose. Soft, careful. And then it happened again. This time, all 5 fingers moved. Not much, but enough. Dr. Montgomery was in the room within 30 seconds. She crouched beside the bed, flashlight in hand, examining her eyes, checking her reflexes, her breathing. "Lily?" she asked softly. "Can you squeeze my hand?" There was a pause. Then, slowly, "Lily did, Doctor." Carson exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for a week. He dropped into the chair beside her bed and put both hands over his face. Hank, who had just walked in with a fresh cup of coffee, stopped dead in the doorway and whispered, "Holy hell." I licked her cheek. She smiled. Not a big smile, just the corner of her mouth lifting, like her body was slowly remembering how to feel things again. That night, the entire wing felt different. Nurses walked lighter. Families in nearby rooms offered nods and small smiles when they passed by. A custodian whistled while he mopped. Even the air smelled sweeter, somehow. But what I remember most wasn't the celebration. It was the silence that followed. The peaceful kind. The kind you only get after a storm. Over the next few days, her fingers moved more, then her toes, then, slowly, her hands. She began trying to hold things, stuffed animals, spoons, my ears. She wasn't strong yet, far from it, but the signals were connecting again. Neuroplasticity, Dr. Montgomery said with a proud smile. The brain's way of rerouting, and in Lily's case, it's nothing short of astonishing. She said, astonishing, a lot those days. They brought in a speech therapist next. Lily's vocal cords had grown weak, unused for too long. But when asked to say her name, she tried. Nothing came out at first, just air. Then a whisper. She coughed. Dr. Carson was ready with water. He held the straw to her lips, and she drank, barely, but enough. You don't have to rush, sweet pea, he said. We've got time. She nodded. Later that night, when it was just the two of us and the soft glow of the hallway light, she turned to me, her voice still no louder than a breath. You stayed. I rested my head on her lap. Always, I would have said, if I had the words. But I think she knew. By the second week, the hospital board had caught wind of her progress. They approved a special visit from Lily's classmates, only 2 at a time, to boost her morale. The first girl through the door, Maddie, carried a glittery card and a balloon shaped like a butterfly. Hi, Lily, she said softly, looking nervous. You look good. Lily grinned, lopsided and slow. I brought Bruno's picture, Maddie added, handing it to me. It was a crayon drawing of me with a superhero cape, standing on top of a mountain labeled Hope. I barked once and wagged my tail. There were more signs, too. Her seizure patterns slowed. The unpredictable chaos that once haunted her sleep became less frequent, less severe. Dr. Montgomery adjusted her medications. Her EEG scans showed better balance between hemispheres. Still, the shadow of what had almost been never left. Dr. Carson once sat at the foot of her bed after she'd fallen asleep and whispered, I dreamt of burying her. He said it like it was a confession, like speaking it aloud made it too real. Hank, sitting in the chair by the window, didn't respond right away. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees. And you woke up? Grant nodded. She did too. A long silence followed. Then Hank added, It wasn't the machines, wasn't the doctors, it was him. He nodded toward me. That dog saved her life. They didn't know I was listening. But I always listened, and when Lily's hand reached over to stroke my back in her sleep, I knew. She had heard them too. We all had. And something deep inside, all of us settled. She was coming back, and this time, she wasn't coming alone. Some people say they didn't mean to give up, that they were just following protocol, doing their job, trusting the data. But me, I don't care how many degrees someone's got pinned to their wall, or how crisp their lab coat is. If you can't look a child in the eye and believe in her, then you've already walked away. And that's exactly what most of them did. They called it clinical detachment, medical realism. But what I saw in their eyes, when they watched Lily's motionless body and turned away, was something colder than science. They'd made peace with losing her. I hadn't. Not once. Not when they zipped her into that gurney at Elmridge. Not when they signed the death certificate. Not when they told her father there was no point in trying, and certainly not when they closed that casket, because I still felt her, still heard her, even in silence. Still knew deep in my bones that she wasn't done. And now she was proving me right. Day by day, she returned. Her voice came back in whispers first. Then one morning, She said my name, like it had never left her mouth. "Bruno," she said, clear, soft, but steady. It was just us in the room. I had my head resting on the side of her bed, eyes half closed, tail still. But when I heard it, my name, I lifted my head and looked at her. She smiled, a little crooked, a little tired, but it was hers. "Hi," she whispered. I licked her fingers. "Good boy." The therapists were the next to be surprised. They'd come in with their whiteboards and puzzles and cloth balls, expecting the same slow progress as the day before. But Lily had fire in her again. Her eyes tracked faster. Her fingers moved with purpose. She could squeeze a stress ball and move a spoon from a cup. Small things, but to us, they were miracles. "You were supposed to be in a long-term care facility by now," one of the speech therapists said, shaking her head. "I don't get it." "I do," Dr. Montgomery replied without looking up from the chart. She had someone who never left her side. She glanced at me. Someone who pulled her back. That week, Lily started walking again. With help, of course. They strapped braces to her legs and rigged a support harness to the therapy bars. But when her bare feet touched the floor, the whole room went quiet. "You don't have to push," Dr. Carson said gently, crouching beside her. "We can try again tomorrow." But Lily didn't want tomorrow. She wanted now. She gripped the bar, and she moved. One step, then two. The therapist didn't know what to say. One of them teared up. The other one clapped like a child. I barked, short and proud. After that, there was no slowing her down. Every day, Lily woke up asking for the schedule. "Who's coming today? How many steps do I have to beat? Can I try the stairs next week?" She was still shaky, still needed help. But she was driven. Not once did she say she was tired. Not once did she complain. I knew why. She remembered what it felt like to be still, too still, and she wasn't going back. The hospital staff began calling her the Miracle Kid. I heard them say it in the halls. "She's the one who came back from the coffin, right? Did you hear what the dog did? They say she spoke his name first." I didn't need the attention. I didn't care about medals or headlines. But I did care when Lily started reading again. She'd sit in bed, book propped on her knees, lips moving slowly through the words. Sometimes she stumbled. Sometimes she had to start over. But her voice was coming back. And every time she reached the end of a page, she'd pause, look at me, and smile. "We did it, huh?" she'd say. I'd wag once. We did. One night, as the summer sun dipped low beyond the Denver skyline, Dr. Carson sat beside her bed, his hands folded, watching her sleep. "She scared me more than anything ever has," he said, voice thick. "And I've seen things, Bruno. Things you can't fix. Things you bury." He looked down at me. "But she came back because you didn't give up." I leaned into his leg, pressing my head against his shin. "She's got her mama's stubbornness," he added, softer now. "But she's got your fight." When the discharge day came, they rolled her down the hall in a wheelchair, decorated with streamers and stickers. Nurses clapped. Doctors waved. Someone played music on a Bluetooth speaker. Dr. Montgomery walked alongside her, clipboard in hand. "She's still got a long road," she said, turning to Dr. Carson. "But I believe she's going to make it." He nodded. "Thanks to all of you." Montgomery glanced at me. "Thanks to him, too." We left the hospital in the same van we'd arrived in, weeks earlier. But this time, Lily wasn't in a stretcher. She was smiling, waving to the city like it was her parade. When we got home, the town was waiting. People lined the sidewalk. Kids held signs. One said, "Welcome back, Lily." Another said, "Bruno, our hero." I didn't understand all the fuss. All I knew was that she was home, back in her room, back in her bed. And that night, when I curled up at her feet, her hand reached down in the dark and scratched the spot behind my ear. "I heard you," she whispered. That's when I knew, even when everyone else let go, even when the world gave up on her, she knew I was still there, and that was enough to keep her holding on. The first snowfall came early that year. I remember waking up to the hush of it, the way snow quiets the world like a blanket pulled up over everything noisy. Out the window, the backyard was painted in white. The trees bowed under it, and the bird feeder hung empty, forgotten in the cold. But what I remember most that morning wasn't the snow. It was the sound of Lily laughing. She hadn't laughed like that in a long time, not since before the silence, before the machines, before the world tried to say goodbye. But there she was, bundled up in a too-big red coat, a wool cap drooping over one eye, cheeks pink with the kind of cold that stings but never hurts. "Come on, Bruno," she called, her voice cracking with effort and joy. I bounded out behind her, paws sinking deep into the snow. She sat in her wheelchair near the edge of the deck, holding a little plastic flag in one hand and a squeaky toy in the other. My favorite, the one shaped like a squirrel that had long since lost its squeak. It was a game now. She'd wave the flag. I'd chase the toy, not because I needed to learn, not because we were training, because we could. Because she could. Doctor Carson stood on the porch, coffee in hand, watching us with that soft look in his eyes he only got when no one was looking. "She's doing better than any of us expected," he said, mostly to himself. "She's stubborn," Hank replied from the porch steps, his breath fogging in the air. "Gets it from her mom." "She gets a lot from her mom," Grant said quietly. "She gets the rest from him." Hank nodded toward me. I didn't react. I didn't need to. That day, Lily managed to wheel herself to the edge of the lawn. The tires struggled a little in the snow, but she didn't ask for help. She just leaned forward and pushed harder. I walked beside her, matching her slow, determined pace. When we reached the old oak tree, the one where we used to sit before all this began, she stopped. "Do you remember this spot?" she asked me. I wagged my tail. "It's where I first told you I was going to be okay," she whispered. She reached down and patted the snow beside her. I sat. Then she pointed to the ground where my paws had left prints. 2 circles, curved, unintentional. "They look like a heart," she said. "See?" I looked. She was right. 2 overlapping arcs, pressed into the white, like someone had drawn them just for her. She smiled. "You did that. Even when you're not trying, you remind me that love is still here." I laid my head gently on her lap. It was quiet again for a long time. That photo, me beside her, snow around us, the heart in the ground, ended up being used in a lot of places. The sanctuary posted it first. Then the foundation they started in her name. Lily's Light. They trained other rescue dogs like me, taught them how to listen, how to smell, how to feel. Some people called it a miracle. Some called it luck. But I know better. It wasn't just instinct. It was love. And love remembers. Love notices the way breath changes before a seizure starts. Love learns the scent of fear. Love listens when the world has gone quiet and still. Love doesn't leave the coffin. Love waits, and sometimes the faintest heartbeat is enough. Dr. Montgomery visited once, a few months after Lily came home. She walked around the house slowly, amazed at the equipment they'd managed to install. The adaptive tools for Lily, the laminated routines posted on the fridge. But mostly, she watched Lily. She was playing a game at the table, using her fingers to stack colored blocks, her tongue poking out the side of her mouth like it always did when she was concentrating. "She shouldn't be doing this," Montgomery said quietly. "By every measure, she shouldn't have made it, and certainly not like this." Dr. Carson looked at her. "But she did." Montgomery nodded, then knelt down in front of me. "You brought her back," she said. "I've seen machines miss things. I've seen doctors misread scans, but I've never seen a dog do what you did." I didn't wag my tail. I just looked at her. She got it. That was enough. Years have passed now. Lily grows stronger every day. Her words come easier. Her balance steadies. Her laughter returns more often than not. She still has days that are hard. Days when her body forgets itself and the seizures creep back in. But I'm always there, always watching, always warning. One day, she'll grow up. She'll outpace me. Maybe leave this little town and chase whatever dreams a girl who came back from death is brave enough to chase. And when that day comes, I'll let her go. But not now. Now I still wake when she stirs. I still ride in the back seat beside her wheelchair. I still wear my vest with pride, though these days it's a little faded, a little worn around the edges, like me. But it fits, because I know who I am. I'm Bruno. I'm a dog who was once broken, then found. A dog who once slept beneath a log, waiting for the world to forget him. But the world didn't forget. A little girl didn't forget. She saw something in me no one else did, and because of her, I saw something in myself. So when the day came that everyone else gave up on her, when the doctors stepped back and the funeral began, I stepped forward. I laid on that coffin. I listened. I refused to walk away, because I still heard her. I still felt her. And I knew, sometimes the faintest heartbeat is enough. If you've ever held on when everyone else let go, if you've ever felt something no one else believed, just type 1 in the comments. Not for me, but for you, so I know I'm not alone. And if my story meant something to you, stick around. There are more stories like mine still waiting to be told. So go on. Hit that subscribe button. Not because I asked, but because maybe you're part of this journey now too. I'll be here, waiting, listening, just like always.